These children started being dropped into the state of Tennessee with nobody even knowing that they were coming, and they were, in some cases, landed here like in the middle of the night.
Well, it's amazing to me that Coca-Cola, as one of the most large and well-known companies in the United States, can come out with a statement like "Be less white." Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, imagine if it was.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's a lot of people say that we got to save our democracy, right?
Oh, you just hit on one of my very pet peeves.
Go with it.
Because I want to tell you, when I hear a speaker use that or see it written by somebody that ought to know better, I think, well, what else are you lying to me about if you don't even know what the form of government of this country is?
He said, well, I know you're going to be hearing more noise. So the next time I encountered him right down here, I just looked at him and I said, noise? Really? We're noise? Taxpayers and parents are just noise? Make some noise!
What's up, guys? Thank you for watching JSlay Made in the USA. I'm here with Bobbie Patray, who's been involved with the Tennessee Eagle Forum and really been a political influencer. I know that's a new term these days, but you've been involved in influencing culture and politics, as I read it, since the 70s. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So you've done this a long time.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of energy and all that. And right now it would be easy. We talked about, if I went through all the institutions that are trying to smack the gavel down on conservatives entirely and change our society, it is depressing to think about. But you say you love it more right now than you ever have. With the other side, why are they so damn mad all the time? They got control of basically everything at the moment. They don't have your joy. They might have your energy in terms of all the chess moves, 12 steps ahead, that whole thing. What's the big difference there?
Jesus. I mean, I really, God, as I have already clearly demonstrated, called me into this.
Oh, yeah.
Against my wishes. Or not wishes, but against my, I have no education, training, experience, or background to do what I'm doing.
Wow.
And I sit in the corner sometimes and think about all I've gotten to do and the places I've gotten to go and the people I've gotten to meet in the 46 years I've been with Eagle Forum. And it really is remarkable, and I am so grateful for that opportunity. But I couldn't really sit on the sidelines, I don't think, as long as I can move and get down here and speak out for the things that I need to be, that I feel are necessary to be speaking out against. But that's what I want all of Christians to do, really, is to have a voice in the things that go on around you.
Bobbie, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about your story and what led you to start a chapter? I think you started a chapter in Kentucky and now in Tennessee, and you're the president currently, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me with you today.
Absolutely.
I was going to school one day with my daughter, who was a student at Westminster Christian Academy in Huntsville, Alabama, and the wife of the principal thrust a wad of papers in my hand and said, "Here, take these and read them." I saluted smartly and took them home to read. And they were all about the proposed Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution. Now, you have to understand this on a background of the fact that I have no idea if my mother and daddy were registered to vote. I have no idea if they ever voted. Politics was a world I didn't know anything at all about. And I read all that and I thought, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life, because it was not about equal rights for women. It was about constituting a unisex society. And I thought, well, surely somebody out there's stopping this and doing something about it.
Did you have the language to say that in your own mind, constituting a unisex society? I mean, that sounds like...
Somehow I did, and I don't ask why.
You kind of knew it was wrong, right?
I could tell that it was just a really bad idea. And so I finally met up with some ladies that were also very concerned about this, and the next thing I knew, I was getting up at dark 30 in the morning in Huntsville and getting on a bus and driving all the way to Montgomery and going to the Capitol. I don't remember now what we did. I just remember the trip and driving back to Huntsville. And the next thing I knew, I started an Eagle Forum chapter there in Huntsville and was president of that as long as we lived there. And when we moved to Lexington, Kentucky in '79, I started an Eagle Forum chapter there and was president of there until we left there and moved here and in August of 1986, and Phyllis asked me to be the chairman or the president of the state organization here, which I did.
Okay.
So I don't know how I got there. The verse of scripture that says, whatever God calls you to do, He'll equip you to do. If you look real carefully, my picture's right there.
Okay, I love it. Well, when you mentioned Phyllis, the name, and a lot of people don't know Phyllis Schlafly other than maybe the movie that came out in 2016.
Oh, the hit piece?
The hit piece, right. And that's not really the legacy that she needs to be left with. I think in terms of women's empowerment and truly shaping culture as a woman with some swagger and power and might, she did it. But yet the left pushed back on her very hard.
Oh, yes.
Even in the face of their own slogans about feminism and women's rights. Tell a little bit about her, if you don't mind, how she influenced you and the Eagle Forum.
Well, she established Eagle Forum. That was her organization, and she was the president of it until she died. I think it's been about 4 years ago now. She was 92. And she was one of the most remarkable people I have ever known in my life. She was so gifted and she was so talented. She was brilliant just intellectually, but she was an excellent writer. She was a good speaker. And what was very interesting, the role that she ended up with of being the influencer that you're mentioning, in person, she was really a rather shy person. She was not one of these gregarious kinds of people in person. But she knew how to write. She could take a very complex subject and reduce it to something that I could understand or anybody else could understand. And she was a visionary, and I think you don't run across visionaries very often. She could see and understand things like coming down the pike that other people might overlook, and be able to look at today's situation or world or whatever, and what that vision might, happen over time, what you might need to make changes for or be prepared to do.
Sure. I love what you just said about her. I had no idea that she was kind of a shy in person. And I think today a lot of people see those who are in politics or those who are doing interviews like this, they think, well, gosh, that person who's doing that, they're just gifted to do that, or that gives them energy, but I'm shy. I could never do that. Do you think in her case, and people like her, do you think she found her sweet spot in life, what she was really good at, gifted at, where God had called her, and there was a power in that took away the shyness? Is that?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I can't believe that I'm doing what I'm doing. When I was walking across the plaza toward the end of the session this year, coming to the building one morning, it occurred to me, and even when it went through my mind, I thought, where did that come from? I was going to be an interior decorator.
Well, thank God you missed out on that one. Yeah, we need you doing what you've been doing. You showed me a pen right before this interview. It's a big pen. Yeah, pull that out. Let's see that. So if you can't read it, I'm 80 years old and I can go anywhere I want to. So we're living in times right now where we're being told what to do a lot, right?
Yes.
And you've done what you've done in your life and gotten to your age. Like, nobody needs to be telling you where to walk and who's got to hit the elevator button for you. Share, if you don't mind, something over the last year and a half, especially through coronavirus, where we've all felt it, but maybe you've been hemmed in, pressed down, in terms of what made you make that pen?
Well, when the legislature came back in session this past January, the restrictions were really draconian, and you couldn't come in the building unless your name was on a list there at the door. You got your temperature taken, you had to wear a mask, and you couldn't just come in like normally you come in and hit the elevator button and go to whichever floor you wanted to go to see people. Well, you couldn't do that. You could only go, like for instance, I had appointments on the 6th floor, the 5th floor, and the 7th, and so I couldn't even use the elevator by myself. And so I got the permission to go up to the 6th floor and make that appointment. I had to come all the way back down to the ground floor and then go to get a pass for that floor and go back up to the 5th floor, come all the way back down to the ground floor, then go back up to the 7th floor. Now, the unpardonable sin, in my never to be humble opinion, is wasting time.
Right.
And so by that end of that day, I was like kind of up to here. Well, I was belly aching to a lawyer friend of mine about it. He says, well, you need a button that says I'm 80 years old and I can go anywhere I want to go. Well, I also have a graphic artist friend
There you go.
who designed that for me, and then I went to Hobby Lobby and got the little button thing, and it really became a lot of fun down here. I mean, you got to have fun, okay?
Right.
And so the legislators loved it, and the staff loved it, and the other lobbyists loved it, and the security guys even laughed when I'd be coming in and I'd point to my button, you know.
There you go. Did
And
it change things?
well, it was fun. And then some of the other lobbyists were saying, well, I want a button that says, I'm with Bobbie.
I love it. You mentioned there was a verse on your website, and it was from Nehemiah. I think Nehemiah 4:14. It talked about the time's come to stand up, speak out, and we're doing this for our brothers, our sons, our daughters, our wives. And that was sort of a missional verse for you, correct? And the amazing thing was the last person that I interviewed said the same thing from the same verse.
Interesting.
We talked about people that are shy or people that feel like we should, Christians especially, should just kind of stay out of politics. We should vote, but then that's really not our mission field. Right now, I personally see a major overlap in culture, and I think the fight being played out on a political front line. What are your thoughts on that in terms of Christians and how we should feel about engaging in politics, maybe like you've done?
If you don't do politics, politics will do you. And so where else would you want to take the Christian values and things that are important besides into the world of politics and public policy? I mean, we have, I think, a responsibility to be in the marketplace of ideas and to have our influence in there. Because again, if we don't do it, then it's an open field. Well, nothing ever stays open like that.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to come in and fill that for us. And so Christians need that. I know other people are busy. Not everybody lives and breathes and eats this stuff like I do. But there is something that everybody can do. And it starts with, for instance, going very carefully over people who are running for office and knowing what they actually believe. And I know sometimes they're just telling us what they'll do, and they don't always, but that's why we become interested after the election and hold them accountable to what they said that they were going to do. And that's one of the things that Eagle Forum tries to do in our newsletters and that sort of thing, especially when the legislative session's going on, and we send out a legislative update every Saturday morning to all of our subscribers so that they know what bills are moving, who they need to contact, what needs to be said, and how to really make their voice heard. So I tell them we try to make what they know they should do as easy as possible for them.
That's good, yeah, because we needed those bite-sized chunks.
That's
I
right.
just signed up, by the way.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
Here locally in Tennessee, there's a few big issues that are sticking out. One of them that I'm being asked about even on my Facebook page right now is illegal immigration into Tennessee. Why are these, not just kids, but kids, teenagers, adults just being dropped off? I think it's a lot of it in Chattanooga, if I'm not mistaken. Why is that happening? What's the source?
Well, that's a good question. The why is what we're being left with. In fact, this morning down here at Cordell Hall, they had the first meeting of the ad hoc committee that Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally and Speaker Cameron Sexton appointed to do an investigation and to look at all this, because these children started being dropped into the state of Tennessee with nobody even knowing that they were coming, and they were, in some cases, landed here like in the middle of the night, and that began to kind of get out, and there were pictures that were finally released about it, and so we're trying to find out what is going on here and what the state can do about it. Now, some of these things are handed down from the federal government that we don't have any control over. So I'm very hopeful that this ad hoc committee that had their organizational meeting today will be able to discover what is being done and how it is being done and under what authority it's being done. Because these, and the thing that we should not do is confuse this with refugee resettlement. These are not refugees. These are illegal aliens.
What is the difference?
Well, refugees come here legally.
Okay.
And they have been vetted, we hope, properly before they arrive, and many times come as families. But these children, what we don't know now is how they're getting here. We don't know about if they're being paid to get them here, if anybody's getting paid, where they're going. We don't even know where they're going after they get here. And some of them are, best we could know, again, this is all being discovered now, is some of them do go to parents that are already here, probably already here illegally, but the children go to those parents. But then the children can end up in foster care. Well, we've got a lot of foster care children here in the state of Tennessee already. And so hopefully this committee is going to ferret out all that so that we can look at it and examine it and protect what rights we have as the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, this is an intersectional question again between a Christian person's desire to have compassion, which gets leveraged against us all the time, versus just good policy and what's actually best for our country and even for these kids in the long run. And I think the big pushback on people like you and I would say, hey, this has to stop. We have to know what's going on. The pushback, you know what it's going to be. Oh, why are you against brown people? Why are you a bigot? Didn't the Good Samaritan go help those who were hurting?
With his own money on his own time.
Exactly, yeah. So would that be your answer?
Well, in part, and I have as much compassion about this either, but what we don't know is how many of these children were trafficked. And how is this being open to them, and what danger are they in if you're coming all the way from Guatemala? What has happened to these children as they come over? And they're being, like the other night I saw a report where a 5-year-old had just been dropped over the fence with nobody. They were there with another kid by themselves.
Well, I knew trafficking was a big problem at the border with the cartel involvement. I mean, every single border agent or ICE enforcement people that mainstream media will even allow them to be interviewed, they're all saying the cartels are gaining strength. They're gaining a ton of money from what's going on right now.
Exactly.
There has to be echoes of that with these kids coming up, even in Tennessee too, right?
And again, that's what we don't know. And that the hope is now that we can lay everything out. One of the things they decided this morning in this committee meeting was who all was going to be invited to come and give testimony to this committee meeting. And so we're hoping that that's going to give the state a way to discover what states' rights are and how much the feds can get away with telling us what to do, and what the state can do. Say, no, we draw the line X, Y, Z, or wherever we can put that line in order to do it. And nobody wants the children mistreated in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But we also don't want them dropped in the middle of the night here and nobody knowing where they're going or how they're being treated.
Yeah, and my thought on that too is if somebody comes to you face to face in need, as a good person or as a Christian especially, we should help how we can and help them along their way, right?
No question.
But in terms of policy, if you just say, well, due to compassion, we just have open borders, we let anything happen at any time. Well, the whole reason they're coming here is because we have good policies and we have laws, right?
That's right.
So it's like if you let everything break down, well, there's no place to escape to.
Well, and then we are a nation of laws, and those laws either mean something or they don't. And if some laws need to be changed, then there's a process by which those laws can be changed.
But we don't just ignore them.
Exactly.
Right? Well, let me kind of leverage this into another question. So Bill Lee has to be involved at some level with these questions of how they're getting in. In fact, and I may be wrong on this, but I thought I read that about maybe a year or 2 years ago, he did sign off on something saying that we would assist. Maybe it was the resettlement of refugees.
It was refugees.
It's a different issue, right?
Very different.
Okay.
And people need to keep that very separated from the illegal aliens issue, too.
Okay, good deal. I'm glad to know that. But I have been confused.
When President Trump signed the executive order about refugee resettlement, his option, or what he was trying to do, was to give governors the opportunity to opt out of the refugee resettlement program. But a number of even Republican governors, even Governor Lee being one of them, raised their hands and said, no, we'll continue to take them. And the executive order, there was a lawsuit against it, and of course then it wasn't carried out because of the change in the administrations and that sort of thing. So, but that's a very different issue than for these unaccompanied minor children who are coming here illegally.
Yeah, well, where I was going with the question about Governor Lee is I've been confused because he was a business owner who private business. It blew up. He did great. That's the kind of guy that I want to see in government, not a lifelong career politician who their whole goal in life is to govern people.
Right.
It's someone who understands how our free market works and values it. But when it comes to certain issues, like Williamson County Schools right now, and Penny Schwinn being the director of something or other, right?
She's the commissioner of education.
Explain it for a minute, who she is and what the fears are about, kind of her mentality and thoughts on things, because Bill Lee hired her. So I do not understand that decision whatsoever.
Well, a governor appoints all of his commissioners, so she's one of probably 10 or so, maybe 12 people.
And what's her official title with the
Commissioner of Education?
Commissioner of Education? Okay, so.
And she comes with, let's say, an interesting background that I won't get into, just in the places that she's been, and as best I can tell, she really isn't a conservative. But she has come to light over this critical race theory curriculum that's being used in Williamson County, what's being used in a lot of counties, and they have just, the ladies out there with Moms for Liberty have been doing an incredible job.
That group has blown up.
Oh, I'm telling you, like a bomb. And the work that they've been doing has just been absolutely incredible. Long hours. and they have found out that all this was going on without parents even knowing about it until children began to come home, like the little 7-year-old girl, and came home and wanted to know why everybody hated her, and then was put in some sort of mental health counseling, and even told her counselor that she had thought about committing suicide. A 7-year-old girl should be playing with her baby dolls, not being worried about why everybody hates her.
And that's not a one-off issue.
No.
I mean, this is going on right now. Obviously, mainstream media is going to suppress as much as they can, but all over the country, these school boards have snuck in critical race theory, which, if you really read the documents and the books and the minds that came up with that, it is racism. Well, it's indoctrination,
because when you look at everybody and their skin color predetermines whether they are an oppressor or the oppressed, then think what you're teaching white children, but what are you teaching black children or Hispanic children or whatever, is that because God made you like He made you, you will always be oppressed and mistreated. What a mindset. Yeah. What an evil mindset to put on a little kid.
Well, to me, it's the Democratic Party has always been of that mindset. But now with critical race theory, they're actually formalizing it, and it's institutionalized. Like, this is what your children are now going to learn. And I know for me, anything I've ever had great success in my life was, even if I felt oppressed, it's like, great, well, I'm gonna go get it anyway. I'm gonna do this against the grain and go out and set the world on fire. I'm gonna make this happen. But to say to someone, especially a child, you can't accomplish this, you're going to be held back, and to beat that in them, even in school, to beat that in them, well, they're going to eventually believe it and think, yes, I'm owed something because I am oppressed. And I mean, I even have friends my age right now who've fallen into this trap, and they believe it.
Well, it's not just going on in schools. It's going on in business. It's going on in the military. Business people are being required to go to workshops or being, have some sort of a teaching or exposure to diversity and
inclusion. Code words, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no question.
Well, it's amazing to me that Coca-Cola, as one of the most large and well-known companies in the United States, can come out with a statement like, "Be less white." I mean, imagine if it was.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
Yeah, right, yeah. It's unbelievable.
Well, it just is, well, I started to say it's unfair, but I don't like the word fair. It's unjust. And the difference between equal opportunity and manipulating equality is a horse of a very different color. And you can't do that in a republic.
I like the way you said it, in a republic. A lot of people say that we got to save our democracy, right?
Oh, you just hit on one of my very pet peeves.
Go with it.
Because I want to tell you, when I hear a speaker use that or see it written by somebody that ought to know better, I think, well, what else are you lying to me about? If you don't even know what the form of government of this country is and continue to call it a democracy, then you've been misled.
Well, explain it. Explain the difference and why this is a republic instead of like a pure democracy.
Well, and
Because we have a democratic vote, people would say, well, that we do have a democracy, and they could point to some things. But why is it a republic?
because we elect representatives to go to Nashville and to go to D.C. to do our business for us. And in fact, the founders were very specific about why they didn't design a democracy for this country, knowing that if the majority is going to win, guess who loses power and coverage? It just means you can get the most votes together, then you win. Where would women's rights be? Where would all the rights that people find so precious right now that we live with every day, that wouldn't be there if this was just a pure democracy? You look at some of the other countries around the world that have a pure democracy and what their states or nations are like. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very different kind of thing.
Well, I think it lends itself to that idea of buying the vote.
Yeah.
We're gonna promise all this stuff, and maybe even get it, but it slowly turns you into socialism because you have to say to make your payoffs, you've got to take from the producers.
Well,
So.
of course, as I think most people know, this country has been unique since its founders, under God's direction, again, in my never to be humble opinion, founded this country and wrote those documents that are, when you go back and read them now. But the problem is, when you're teaching civics that has you go out and attend some sort of riot or demonstration or something to get credit for your class, that shows you where we started and where we have gotten to.
Yeah.
And so the problem with this is that we've got probably a second generation, maybe a third generation of teachers now that have come out of these liberal colleges of education. They don't know the difference because they haven't been exposed to the truth of our history. And so they come out and then teach that to our young people. When you've got college-age students standing on the street corner thinking we should be socialist, there is something really wrong with their education.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing they can get there in light of world history. It's just
Well, I would help pay for an airline ticket to Venezuela, to anybody that wants to go. I'll help out,
Yeah.
If they really think socialism is so wonderful.
That's right. Yeah, they could go there and test it out, can't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the next generation, right now you mentioned 3 generations of teachers who have been educated kind of to hate America. I mean, I see it all the time. We've got critical race theory that's pressing in on all sides, not only in the schools, but in business and higher education especially.
Right.
All the big tech companies. So I could go down the list and make us feel really depressed right now. But
Let's don't.
Let's don't. You know where we're at. But here's the thing. On this side, on our side, we have truth and we have provable history. We have things that work. And I think that's why they're not able to kill us. There's this quote out there, I can't remember, it was an American poet. He said, "Truth crushed to earth will always rise again." So no matter how far you stomp it down, it's going to grow back. And I think that's what we're holding to is we have to get the young people and people like myself. I'm in roofing. I sell roofing materials to local municipalities and to little private businesses. And I'm busy. I got 2 little kids at home. But I think the only thing I could do is to get more busy, be willing to make some less money, make sacrifices, and try to influence people back to seeing truth. That's all I know to do, and I don't know if it's really, for me, that's the only thing I know to do, and I hope to wake others up to do the same. What do you see as the way to fight today? For the younger generations, what do they need to do?
Well, a couple of things that I would offer is one of the things that I think that conservatives have been really poor at, and that is school board elections.
Okay, I've heard a lot about this.
We have bypassed them. I mean, my heart is with the legislative branch of government at the state level. I'm not even fond of the stuff going on in D.C.
I hear that all the time.
Although
Guys' hearts with the legislative branch at the state level. That's special. We need more like you.
But
Don't be specific or anything.
no, okay. but I mean, I love what I do here. I mean, as I was driving into town today, I was thinking, I love doing this.
Yeah. And you're in a harder fight right now than you've ever been, probably.
But one of the things is as we have watched this stuff unfold with critical race theory, it has put a lot of attention on that. And I started thinking about this about a month ago, and I thought, where do you intersect this stuff? It is at the school board level. And in fact, to one of the, I think it was last week, I think the subject in our Eagle Forum newsletter that day was, by a show of hands, and when you open it up, how many of you can name your school board members?
And I couldn't. Yeah.
I couldn't either. And when we're looking at something so specific like this wit and wisdom curriculum that's being used in Williamson County and I think 33 other counties they have found.
And what's its premise? Wit and
Well,
wisdom? I've read.
It's a more like a critical race theory kind of thing, but it's
white privilege training.
But it's got a lot, I think it's got a lot of sex education kind of stuff in it. I think those are some of the pictures that I've seen. But anyway, so where do you intersect that? At the school board level. And I think we have done a terrible job of intersecting that process at that place in the local school area. And whether you have a county, Board of Education, or if you had a city Board of Education, however it works in your area. And that, I have decided that is going to be the place that I am going to really put a lot of emphasis on people, is to get to know them. Go to your school board. Just go to the meetings and watch how they operate it. Is the school board just a rubber stamp for your superintendent of education? Or do they actually ask questions like they have actually read the budget for that week or whatever's before them? How does it even function? And find people, good people, who will run for that office. That doesn't, in most areas, that doesn't take a lot of votes. Those you're talking about small campaigns there. And like in Davidson County, I think they run opposite each other. I think a group of them runs like this time and then that other group runs the next time, so you don't have all new people on a board at the same time. And so, but that's what we all need to know. And they're the ones that can look at these curriculums and decide. And what can you do for children any better than that? But the other thing, the other side maybe of that coin, is that parents need to be talking to their children about what they are learning in school and what they're being exposed to. And when Johnny gets home in the afternoon, don't ask him, how was your day? And he says, fine.
Yeah, dig. Yeah.
Go get your milk and cookies, No.
Right.
What was the most fun thing that happened to you today?
Get them really talking, open-ended questions, and yeah.
And with my daughter, if I put her in the car and took her for a ride, she'd chatter like a mag box.
That's right.
A magpie in the back of the car.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things that are doable, and that's not really all that time-consuming. But if we get by that, and of course, we are very big supporters of homeschooling. I mean, to me, that is just what an investment. And I tell homeschooling parents, I said, you're crazy, right? You really want to be with your children.
Right,
You're not looking to get them on that bus at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning and not see them till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You really like your children, you know?
They'd have to.
But what an investment.
Yeah.
What an investment those parents make in their lives of those human beings.
That's right.
That will one day be grown-ups.
Well, I think you're right. And I know Turning Point USA, I went to one of their kind of insider meetings in Phoenix. They are attacking not just changing the next generation, but they said the number one area we're targeting to actually get people elected is the school board, more than anything else.
Well,
and they gave a game plan that was incredible. I mean, you talked about earlier off camera, we were talking about the different strategies that the right uses and the left uses, and why do we find ourselves in this predicament where we're playing defense and having to figure out how to play offense? It's because you said, well, we play poker, it's kind of simple, and then when we showed our hand, and then we go home and raise our kids, work our job, go to church, do our stuff, and have a general trust that the people around us in our red counties and red states are going to be good enough to elect a good school board, right? The other side, they're playing chess, you said, and they're planning 12 steps ahead.
That's right.
And I think that's probably why we find ourselves looking at our school board members, even in Williamson County, and like, I don't know any of them. And then you look into what they believe or what they're promoting, and you say, how did this happen?
Well, I will tell you, if we don't get a hold of that and do it well, we're going to continue to play whack-a-mole.
Yeah. When there comes a point too where if they get enough power, I know that the left would love to shut down homeschooling, and they would love to shut down a lot of the private schools and say this is not accredited, this is not worthy of being able to go to a college later. Whatever.
Besides that, we don't get that money when they're not in the seat in the public schools.
That's right. There you go. That's right too. I didn't think about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Average daily assignment there. That's how much money they get per student.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any other, we talked about immigration, we talked about illegal aliens in Tennessee, we talked about critical race theory and school boards. Are there any other issues that are going on right now in the nation, locally or nationally, that you would love to give 2 cents on and educate?
Well, I really do think that the two right now that are really the hot topics are the critical race theory and all of its cousins, and the illegal immigration issue. But we've been, somebody asked me not too long ago, what's in your wheelhouse? And I said, anything I want in my wheelhouse. And this year, like we did a piece of legislation, like our present law, besides our critical race theory legislation, but the present law, if a guy was convicted, that's the appropriate word here, convicted of rape, then he loses by law parental rights and inheritance and all that. But if he's convicted and pleads down, that was still left open. So we closed that. And then another piece of legislation that we did this year was here in Davidson County a couple of years ago, there were some boys that took some very unflattering pictures of some girls that the lawyers in Davidson County said didn't rise to the level of sexual harassment. I read that newspaper article and I thought, I can fix that. And I did.
You wouldn't want to get in her crosshairs at all. I see why you've been involved for so long. And not everybody gets energy from this stuff, and you definitely do.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, years ago, I was listening. One Saturday morning, I was listening to the radio while I was waking up, and it was in the fall, and I think it was in a school in Massachusetts that a young man had been killed in a hazing incident, and I was laying there thinking, no mama sends her boy to college to get killed in a hazing incident. And so I got a bill introduced that next January to deal with hazing. That was when the Democrats were still in charge, and we ended up, I wanted to prohibit it altogether, but we did pass a law that required that the schools have a policy on hazing and that it's in the handbook, that goes to all the children. So
you know how to do things about things you see that you don't like.
Yeah, I do.
That's great. I have 2 last questions for you.
Okay.
One's out there and the other one I think is appropriate. So you said anything's in your wheelhouse.
That I want there, yeah.
Well, aliens and UFOs, real or are they not? You know all that stuff going on right now where they're 60 Minutes? And,
I have seen that.
yeah,
I have
even
seen
Marco
that.
Rubio was on 60 Minutes, talking about it. The images you see are pretty realistic. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, and it's a joke question, but you have a thought there.
No, because I think God's word is very clear that we're the only ones.
I'll go with you on that.
That's one of the things. We have a Teen Eagle organization where we are training teenagers to in constitutional issues and how to be a conservative and the difference between a democracy and a republic.
Well, how do they find that organization?
It's on. They can look on our website.
Okay.
And then we have, in addition to that, I have interns every session with me, and normally I'll have somebody on Tuesday and somebody on Wednesday, and they come that one day for the entire session every week. And I have them write a paragraph in our legislative updates, like what they experienced that week and what they saw and what struck them. And what's fun about that, I love being with young people. And what's fun about that is when you've been down here as long as I have, they see things that are so new to them, and I go, oh yeah, that does happen, doesn't it? But I don't even see it anymore. But that's one of the fun things, and I get to be with a lot of young people. I get invited repeatedly to be a speaker at the College Republicans convention every year, and I just love that. But there are 2 things. I told my husband one time, you don't have tombstones anymore, but if we had tombstones, I'd want on my tombstones, any old bush will do. It wasn't the bush, it was the fire.
Ooh. That's beautiful. I love that. Well, Bobbie, it's been a true pleasure and joy to get to talk to you, to learn, and more than anything for me, just to see the energy and passion that you're bringing to it with bright eyes and a full heart. And I love that. And I think you're making the point that every conservative that I've met that has deeply held beliefs that lead them into a political realm, they are going back to, they either say the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they give, or Jesus himself. They give one of those answers, and you can tell it's coming from this place of faith in their life, and that's so consistent. So, Bobbie, I've got a question for you. You know, when I asked the question earlier about how do we fight, what do we do, it was kind of a leading question because I am doing that. Now, I'm, you know, as amateur as I may be, I'm busy. I've got 2 kids at home, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm married, and you know, there's a lot there on its own. Then I've got a full-time job, but I felt over the last year that it was important for me with the passions that I had to speak up. But it's not always easy, and it definitely puts you in the crosshairs of even people you love sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jesus came and said, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he is the Prince of Peace, but his words did divide people.
Mm-hmm.
So that just kind of comes with the territory. So not every day is easy right now. Do you have any advice just for me on stepping into this world and you know, putting myself out there?
Don't give up. Because it's easy to get frustrated and say, well, it's never going to work, or it's not going to make any difference. And God will never tell you that. Because if he has called you to do something, even sometimes when it's hard, and believe me, there are days that I walk back across my threshold at my house and say, tell me again, Lord, why am I doing this?
Yeah, right. Well,
to keep going and just follow your heart, because you didn't put that there.
No, and that's what leads me back is like, why do I feel so strongly about this?
And
like,
I suspect you never thought about doing it.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No, politics on its own doesn't interest me. Truth interests me. It really, you know, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Well, truth's a pretty big component of who he is.
That's right.
The hardest thing for me is thinking, being called a hater, being called a bigot. I've been called names at this point. I was told online, it was maybe a year ago, you're the kind of guy that would teach his sons to put their knees on the neck of a black man. Just because I had some questions about all that was going on after George Floyd's death. Now that kind of stuff toughened me up. I'm glad they said it because I had to learn to deal with some of that. But it's hard to think that people think of me as a hater because I'm not. You know, I believe in spreading truth because I love people. I know you've experienced that. What would be your advice to that question?
Well, there again, you know the truth about yourself. You're talking about truth. You know the truth about what you were doing and what you want to do. And you know your own motive about why you're doing it. And so, yes, I've had times when I've been called names. The older I've gotten, the less. Maybe you just have to get old and they quit doing it. Maybe I give up.
Yeah, she didn't go away. Right? She even threw a pin on it.
And so, but I mean, you know, it's in today's world, it's more prevalent than it has been in years gone by too. People didn't used to be that rude.
Yeah.
I mean, it
It's
would be
become normalized.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Is it seems to be the normal thing because we're being put at each other's, you know, in each other's face and all today. But I just will say, you know, when God has called you to do something and you feel that call to do it, is don't be put off by the things that you're talking about. If God has a plan for this, then he's going to continue to move in that direction. And when I was first down here, may have been the second year I was here, which would have been 1988.
Okay, yeah.
100 years ago. I was walking out the tunnel one night, and a reporter was passing me by. This was about 11 o'clock at night. That last week, you never know what time they're going to get out in the evening. So it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I was walking through the tunnel out to Charlotte Avenue, and the reporter passed me, and he said, Bobbie, he said, I'm doing a wrap-up for the legislature, and I want to talk to you about your successes and your failures. I said, fine, give me a call. So I got in the car and I was driving home and I thought, successes and failures. Didn't have any of those. Because what I could see in my spirit was God isn't sitting in heaven with his yellow pad and his pencil and saying, oh, you got that bill passed. Oh, but you didn't get that one passed. You got the amendment on that one, but you weren't able to stop the amendment on this bill.
Yeah. It reminds me of what Billy Graham said. He said, we're not called to be happy. We're not called to be successful. We're called to follow.
Well, here's the catcher to that story. What came after that sensation about God not having a legal pad was two things. His definition of success and mine could be very different. And I'm called to be faithful.
Faithful, that's the word actually he used, yeah.
So I'm called to be faithful to what he called me to do. You know the funny thing? The reporter never called me.
Really?
It was a teachable moment. And I've thought about that. I can't tell you how many times I've thought about that.
That's amazing. So you feel like God orchestrated that for you, really for you.
For me.
Not for the, that's really cool.
And I've had to remind myself of that because I describe myself as a hardwired type A personality on steroids.
I could see it.
And so, you know, the plan is to get to what's the goal? Get to the goal. And don't get in my way, please.
That's it.
I do say please, you know.
You're courteous about it.
I'm courteous about it. But I mean, that's just the way God wired me.
Yeah.
And I'm very oriented to do what I was supposed to, get done what I was supposed to get done. And so to come to that understanding that it's the being faithful that's really important.
Yeah.
And that the results are going to be God's anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's probably where that joy has come from. And I sure appreciate your faithfulness. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Bobbie. Really enjoyed today.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, guys, we just had a fantastic conversation with Bobbie Patray here at the Legislative Plaza. She's had just a wonderful influence on our culture and our government locally based on a calling and a passion and being faithful through the years. And she gave me some great advice. I know she probably did for you as well. Please sign up at tneagleforum.org and register for her newsletter, and then come and visit me at jslayusa.com and sign up for my newsletter. I look forward to seeing you all again next time on JSlay Made in the USA.